going to have a look at our exterior gusset. Now, when you're cutting your pieces, do make sure that you're using the exterior gusset pieces and not the lining gusset pieces. They are different sizes. You have 3 pieces to your gusset. You have your base and you have your side gussets. Now, I'm doing my base in faux leather. You can do yours in fabric. I just like to do the base of my bag in faux leather because I tend to put them on the floor and I think that that protects them a little more. If you wanted to put back, just trying to get the thread out from my machine, sorry. If you wanted to put bag feet on the bottom of this, you could do because it's got a flat base. I'm not going to because it's not so... Good Lord, come on. Can't get hold of the thread, that's it. It's not something I want to do on this bag. I just wanted to keep it really plain and simple. So this is my bag base, which I've done in faux leather, and I've basted it to foam, the same as I have with all the other parts, except for I've only done my basting along the edges, and I've started 1/2 inch from either end. I haven't basted any right to the ends. The same applies with the side gussets. I've basted from the narrow end all the way down and stopped about 1/2 inch away from the wider end. We're going to cut the foam away anyway, so it makes absolutely no difference. We don't need to stitch right to the very end. So we're going to start with our bag base, laying right side up on our table, and we're going to put the first of our side gussets matched up with the end of the bag base. I'm going to clip it together, and that should match up perfectly, no problem with that. And we're going to stitch across at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm just going to reduce my stitch length again because I've got it at 6 for basting. Now if you have a lesser machine, perhaps using faux leather on the bottom might not be so clever because this does make it thicker. I know my machine can manage it. If you're a more advanced bag maker, you'll know if you can do this or not. You'll understand what your machine is capable of. Goodness me, a couple of dogs outside having a bit of a Barney. Sorry, lots of barking and malarkey going on. So I've sewn that seam together, and you can see because I didn't stitch those end pieces, that foam is free, so I can very easily trim it off. Complete lack of need to baste along those short the ends there, since we're just literally sewing it together. Now, if you think that you might not be able to stitch through those layers, what you can do is actually stitch the 3 gusset pieces together without any foam, and then use the 3 joined pieces opened out as your template to cut your foam, and cut your foam once you've actually joined all 3 pieces together. I just like to do it like this because I think it makes it stiffer, makes it more structured, because these seams that where we've done the joins help to keep the body of the bag, give the body of the bag a bit of shape. So I'm just going to fold that out, and I'm going to fold the faux leather and seam allowance towards the side gusset, and I'm going to do, excuse me, 2 lines of top stitching, 1 1/4 of an inch, and a second at, you guessed it, 1/8 of an inch. And you can see that holds the faux leather down, so it gives a nice smooth finish on the inside of our gusset. That also gives that little ridge there a little bit of stability, which will help give it structure. And we're going to repeat the exact same process on the other side of our base panel. So I'm taking my second side panel, putting it on top of my base panel, right sides together, and clipping. stitching at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Removing the foam on both sides. Pushing the seam allowance towards the side panel, towards the side gusset. And we'll do 2 lines of top stitching again. Have one completed gusset. Now I'm going to go and fetch the pieces for my strap connectors, and I'll be back in a second to show you how we attach our strap connectors to our gusset. Okay, let's look at strap connectors. You've got several options here, and this will depend on your well, what you want to do and the capabilities of your machine. Because there are lots of different options for how you attach strap connectors. Strap connectors attached at the top of a bag often cause a lot of thickness when you're trying to do your top stitching. So I try and reduce the amount of bulk in a strap connector if you're going to do it that way. It's the easiest way to sew a strap connector, but it sometimes can be the most inhibitive when you actually get to the final stages of your bag. So your pattern says 2 pieces that are 2 by 2. I've got 1 piece that's 4 by 2, so I'll just do 2 together effectively and then cut them in half. So I've got a piece that's 4 by 2. It's interfaced with a woven interfacing. I've drawn a line centrally down the middle, and I've folded both sides into the middle, which gives me on the right side what looks like a nice strap. However, this is a bit floppy and it's not as strong as I might want it to be, bearing in mind that this is what's going to basically be holding my bag onto my strap. So I'm going to use a little bit of glue stick. You can use an ordinary fabric glue. I just tend to use glue stick because, well, just because I can, because I've got it. And I'm just going to use 2 little bits of ribbon, and this is only 1/4 inch ribbon. It's not thick ribbon, and I just put it in there inside. Doesn't matter what colour it is, because obviously nobody's going to see it. It's actually going to be inside your strap, and it gives the strap a lot of strength but without any real bulk, and it just gives it a little bit of extra security. Then close it back down. Job done. Now if I fold that in half, can't even get my scissors through. And there we go. Now I have 2 strap connectors. So I'm using rectangles. Now you can, if you want to, use D-rings, which means you'll have to use a swivel clip on your strap. Using rectangles means you don't need a swivel clip on your strap, so it's less hardware. I'm just going to pop my D-ring into my hardware. My hardware's stop saying that, Christine. Pop your D-ring, pop your hardware. Start again. Pop your strap connector through your hardware. Fold it in half so that those 2 raw edges sit together. I'm just going to do a line of stitching as close as I can to the hardware. Now you can put a zipper foot on and go really close if you want to. It's just to stop things sort of wobbling about, and I don't like big long floppy strap connectors, so they tend to be quite short. I tend to use quite short ones. But if you don't kind of put some kind of a stitch across here, these things will turn themselves round and you often end up with them skew-if, and that looks really unattractive. So you want your hardware, if you're going to use hardware, to sit nicely. So the same thing will apply to the other one. I'll just do that. Now, I've done exactly the same thing with faux leather. and this one is already stitched. Oh, what I didn't do before I did that was top stitch down the sides. I apologise, I've just had a moment of blankness. So what you need to do is top stitch down both sides of your strap connector. Oh dear, what a sausage. That's what happens when you're trying to think of everything and not remembering what you needed to do. So there we go. So now it's been top stitched, fold it over and then stitch across the bottom. Now, for a faux leather one, you do exactly the same process, but make it in faux leather. Fold the two sides in, only the same measurements, add your little bit of ribbon, which just gives it a little bit of extra strength, and then pop your hardware on. Now the problem with this is that if you fold this over and then pop it into the top of your bag, when you come to do your top stitching, you're going to have an awful lot of thickness. So if you're going to use a faux leather connector, the best way to do it is to actually sew it to the gusset. Now that's what I'm going to do for mine. So I'm just going to grab the gusset. Now if you're going to use a fabric connector, what you need to do once you've top stitched is take your connector and position it centrally on the top edge of your gusset and just stitch across there at about 1/8 of an inch, just to baste it in place. Put it centrally so that it's not in the way. This is an inch wide hardware, so you should actually have plenty of room, 1/2 inch either side, because the top of your bag is 2 inches wide here. Just baste it in place, glue one at each end, and that's your strap connectors in place without any bother at all. I'm actually going to cut that connector off of there because I want that D-ring, I want that ring rather. Now if you're going to use faux leather, there's another way to do this. There's lots of ways to do it, but I'm going to show you how I like to do it. If I can find my chalk marker, which I don't seem to have. Let me have a little look. What have I done with it? There it is. So, goodness, I've only got a great big ruler over here. Let's have a smaller one. Right. So 1 1/4 inches from the top edge, from the short end, make a mark across your strap, across your gusset. You can actually also mark the centre, which, as long as you've got your ruler straight, should be 1 inch from either of those corners. So that gives you your centre mark. You're going to take your faux leather strap connector and you're going to lay it right side down, facing off of the end of your gusset. So lay it across on that line that you've made with your strap connector central. You don't need any hardware on it at the moment, and it's poking off the end of your gusset. And then I'm going to stitch across the strap connector about 1/8 of an inch away from the very end. To secure it in place. Just check that I've done the right measurement there. Yeah, 1 1/4. Didn't look like it was enough. So that's been stitched across, and now I'm going to do a second line of stitching 1/8 of an inch further on. So basically 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I'm only stitching across the strap connector. I'm not stitching off of the other side of it. You could do this with the fabric one if you wanted to. It's not a big drama if you want to do it this way. So now we've got our connector attached onto our gusset, but poking off the top of our bag. So I'm going to put my metalware on. I'm going to have to go to the door because there's somebody at the door, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, delivery wasn't for me, sadly. So I've threaded my piece of hardware onto my strap connector. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my strap connector down and I'm going to fold it under. What I want it to do is to butt up against the end that I've already got attached. Now this is where things get quite thick, and this is why you should only really do this if you know your machine can cope with faux leather. So you can see there, well, I hope you can see, that that's created a sort of a circle with my strap connector attached in the top. And I'm going to stitch across the bottom of that piece of faux leather that I've folded under. So I am going through 4 layers of faux leather, and I am going through my exterior fabric and my foam. So I know my machine can manage this. If you don't think yours can, then I would suggest that you either use fabric to do this, or put your strap connectors at the top of your bag. I wouldn't put faux leather connectors at the top of the bag though. So I've done 1 line of stitching there. You can see that's secured that in place. I am, however, going to put a 2nd line of stitching because that's what we've been doing. That 1st line of stitching is at 1/8 of an inch, so I'm just going to do a 2nd line at 1/4 of an inch from the bottom edge of my connector. Now normally I would tie off and bury my threads. I rarely do when I do strap connectors, and I don't quite know why. That last stitch on each side, I think, just holds everything in place, and I just backstitch 1 stitch. And I don't feel that actually weakens anything or perforates, so I'm quite happy to allow myself to backstitch on a strap connector like that. So that makes quite a nice tidy little strap connector. If you wanted to do a faux leather one, you could do the same thing in fabric if you wanted to. It's a lot easier in fabric because it's not so thick, and you end up with that sort of look. Difficult to see on a patterned fabric anyway. Or you can fold in half, and you can do add to the top of your gusset thus fashion. So it'll be upside down with the hardware facing down towards the base of the gusset at this point. Make sure you do obviously the same on both sides, unless you want a lopsided bag. The choice is yours. I wouldn't use faux leather if you're going to do it this way because it will make it thicker. So I'm going to go ahead and do the faux leather one on the other side of my bag. Let's do my... do my little marks. Just got the 1st line of stitching, second line of stitching, let's get rid of my threads, hardware on, and I'm just going to fold over that bottom end so that it touches the raw edge there. just makes a nice tidy little strap connector. I've seen this a lot done, well, not particularly actually this particular method, but this particular way of folding, but usually done with a much bigger strap connector, which is fine, but you end up with a great big bit of faux leather on the side of your bag, and I just don't like that. I think strap connector should be small and subtle, personally. That's me. Not very small and not very subtle, that's me, actually. There you go. Right, so we've got that in place, and now one line of stitching. I've got my thread coming up. Oh, maybe I've run out of bobbin thread. Nope, just hasn't come up, that's all. So I still have that size 16 needle in here, so that's why I feel like I can confidently go through all of those layers with the faux leather and what have you. So just try and get into that hole that I just literally made in there, so that's there. And there we have two beautifully secured strap connectors. So you choose which you want to do, whether you want to do this particular sort, or you want to do the ones that are on the top of the bag, which are a more traditional sort, or whether you prefer to do the folded type like this. I like this folded one. I think it's quite neat, and it's not too bulky on the side of a bag. When you see it from the side, it doesn't look like it's standing out. So there we have it. Right, so for my next thing, what we're going to do is we are going to fit the gusset to the back of our bag. So I'll be back to show you how to do that.